When a dying woman crawled through a Montana blizzard and collapsed inside his cabin, rancher Coulter Hayes had two choices: pull the trigger or let a stranger destroy the careful isolation he'd built around his grief. What he didn't know was that one act of mercy would cost him everything he'd been hiding from: his savings, his safety, and the frozen heart he'd sworn would never beat for anyone again. This is their story. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this tale has traveled. The rifle felt heavier than it should have. Coulter Hayes stood in the doorway of his cabin, snowflakes driving sideways into his face, and stared at the prints in the snow. Boot tracks, small ones, leading straight up his porch steps and stopping at his door. Nobody came out here. Not in 3 years. Not since he'd made it clear he wanted to be left alone. His breath clouded in the freezing air as he shouldered the rifle and kicked the door open with his boot. The hinges screamed. Inside, his fire was burning when he'd left it as barely more than embers that morning. Someone had fed it. Someone had been inside his home. "Show yourself." His voice came out rough, unused. "I've got a Winchester pointed at wherever you're hiding, and my patients died a long time ago." Silence. Just the pop and hiss of burning wood. Then, from behind the woodpile stacked near the hearth, came a sound so quiet he almost missed it. A whimper. Broken. Desperate. Coulter moved forward, rifle raised, and rounded the corner of the wood stack. A woman was curled there in a ball, shaking so violently her teeth chattered loud enough to hear across the room. She wore a thin traveling coat that might have been blue once but was now just wet and dark. Her hair hung in frozen strings across her face. Her lips were gray. One of her hands was pressed against the warm stones of the hearth like she was trying to absorb heat straight through her bones. She looked up at him with eyes that had already given up. "Please," she whispered, "just tonight. I'll leave at first light. I swear it." Coulter didn't lower the rifle. "How'd you find this place?" "I saw smoke." Her voice cracked. "2 days ago. I've been walking since he left me in Red Hollow. I didn't know where else." She broke off, coughing so hard her whole body convulsed. He watched her shake. Watched her try to curl tighter into herself, like she could disappear if she just made herself small enough. She wasn't faking. Nobody could fake that kind of cold. He'd seen men freeze to death on the trail. She was maybe an hour away from it. "You're trespassing," he said. "I know." She didn't look at him. "I'm sorry." The wind hammered against the cabin walls. The shutters rattled. Outside, the blizzard was getting worse. Had been getting worse all day. He'd barely made it back from checking the northern fence line himself. Nobody would survive out there tonight. Nobody. He looked at her for a long moment, at the way her fingers were already turning black at the tips, at the shallow rise and fall of her breathing. Then he cursed under his breath, lowered the rifle, and grabbed the wool blanket off his bed. "Get up," he said. She didn't move. Maybe couldn't. He crouched down, wrapped the blanket around her shoulders, and half lifted, half dragged her closer to the fire. She weighed almost nothing. When he set her down on the rug, she slumped forward like a rag doll. "Don't thank me yet," Coulter muttered. "You might still die." He built the fire higher, filled his kettle with snow and set it on the iron hook to boil, dug through his trunk for another blanket, a dry shirt, wool socks. When he turned back, she was staring at the flames with an expression he recognized too well, the look of someone who'd stopped believing in warmth. "What's your name?" he asked. She blinked slowly. "Evelyn?" "Evelyn Pierce." "You said someone left you in Red Hollow." Her jaw tightened. "A man named Howard Marsh. He sent letters for 6 months, said he needed a wife, said he'd built a house, had a farm, wanted a family." She laughed bitterly. "I sold everything I had to get here. When I arrived, he took one look at me and said I wasn't what he expected. Left me standing outside the general store with my trunk and rode off." Coulter said nothing. He'd heard stories like that before. The frontier was full of them, men who lied, women who came west with nothing but hope and found only cruelty. "The store owner told me Howard's been doing this for years," Evelyn continued, her voice hollow. "Sends letters, gets women to come, takes their money for travel reimbursement, and then refuses to marry them. I'm the 4th one this year." "Law didn't do anything?" She shook her head. "Marshall said it's not illegal to change your mind about marriage. Said I should have been smarter. Her hands curled into fists inside the blanket. I had nowhere to go, no money, no family. I tried to find work, but the town, they looked at me like I was trash, like I'd done something wrong. The kettle started to whistle. Coulter poured hot water into a tin cup, added a pinch of tea leaves he'd been saving, and handed it to her. She took it with shaking hands and held it close to her face, breathing in the steam. Drink, he said. She did. Small sips at first, then deeper ones. Color started to return to her cheeks. Not much, but enough that he stopped worrying she'd die in the next 10 minutes. You walked 2 days in this weather, Coulter said. It wasn't a question. I didn't know what else to do. She stared into the cup. I thought maybe I'd find another ranch. Someone who needed help. I'm a hard worker. I can cook, clean, mend. I was a nurse during the war. I'm not useless. Didn't say you were. You didn't have to. She looked up at him then, and he saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the bone-deep weariness of someone who'd been fighting too long. I know what people think when they see a woman alone, especially one who came west as a mail-order bride. I know what I look like to you. Coulter met her gaze and said flatly, You look half dead. That's what you look like. She blinked. Then unexpectedly, the corner of her mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. He turned away and started pulling food from his stores. Dried meat, a wrinkled potato, half a loaf of bread he'd baked 3 days ago. Not much, but it would do. I'll make dinner, Evelyn said, starting to stand. Sit down before you fall down. I said sit. She sat. But he could see her hands twitching, like staying still was physically painful for her. He understood that. The need to be useful. To prove you deserved the space you took up. He'd felt that way once. Before, Coulter cooked in silence, the cabin filled with the smell of frying meat and wood smoke. Outside, the wind howled like something alive and angry. Snow piled against the windows. He could barely see 10 feet past the glass. When the food was ready, he divided it onto 2 plates and handed her one. She stared at it. This is too much, she said. Eat it anyway. You need... I've got plenty. A lie, but he said it firmly enough that she didn't argue. They ate without talking. Coulter watched her from the corner of his eye. She ate slowly, like she was trying to make it last, but he could tell she was starving. When was the last time she'd had a real meal? Days, probably, maybe longer. When she finished, she set the plate down carefully and looked at him. Thank you, she said quietly. I know you didn't have to do any of this. Coulter grunted and took her plate. He washed both in the bucket of melted snow by the door, his back to her. You can sleep by the fire tonight, he said. I'll take the bed. Door's barred. Don't try to leave before morning, or you'll die before you make it 50 feet. I won't. He nodded and moved toward the small bedroom that was really just a curtained-off corner of the cabin. Then he stopped. That man, he said, not turning around. Howard Marsh, he and Red Hollow often. I don't know. Why? No reason, but there was a reason. Coulter could feel it burning in his chest, a hot, tight anger he hadn't let himself feel in years. The kind of anger that made men do stupid things, dangerous things. He pushed it down and disappeared behind the curtain. Meet Bashit. Evelyn sat by the fire long after Coulter had gone to bed. She could hear him moving around back there, the creak of the ropes that held his mattress, the rustle of blankets, then silence. She pulled her knees to her chest and stared into the flames. She'd thought she was going to die. Really thought it. When the cold had gotten so deep it stopped hurting and just felt like nothing she'd known. But then she'd seen the smoke rising above the trees, and some stubborn, stupid part of her had refused to give up. Now she was here, in a stranger's cabin, a stranger who could have shot her, could have thrown her back into the snow, could have done 100 terrible things. But he'd given her tea instead. She looked around the cabin. It was small, neat. Everything had a place. But it felt empty. Not physically. There was furniture, supplies, all the practical things a man needed to survive alone. But there was no softness, no personal touches, just function. The only exception was a small wooden frame on the mantel. She stood slowly, her legs still weak, and moved closer. It was a photograph. A woman. Young, maybe 20. Pretty, with dark hair and a serious expression. She wore a simple dress and stood very straight, like she was trying to look dignified for the camera. Evelyn heard the floorboards creak behind her and spun around. Coulter stood in the doorway, shirtless, his suspenders hanging loose around his hips. He looked at her, then at the photograph. "My wife," he said flatly. "She's dead." Evelyn's hand flew to her mouth. "I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have— 3 years ago, winter fever." His voice was emotionless, practiced, like he'd said these words before and had learned to strip all feeling from them. "Buried her on the ridge behind the house." "I didn't mean to pry." "You weren't." He walked past her, picked up the poker, and jabbed at the fire. Sparks flew up. "Just don't touch it." "Of course." "I'm sorry." He didn't respond, just stood there, silhouetted against the firelight, his shoulders tight. Evelyn wrapped the blanket tighter around herself. "How long have you been alone out here?" "Since she died." "That's a long time." "It's quiet." She understood what he meant. Quiet was safe. Quiet didn't hurt you. Quiet didn't leave. "I was a nurse in Virginia," she said softly. "During the war, after. I saw a lot of death, a lot of fever. I'm sorry you had to go through that alone." Coulter's hand tightened on the poker. "Wasn't alone. She was there." The words hung in the air between them. Heavy. Final. Then he set the poker down and walked back toward his room without another word. Evelyn stood by the fire for a long time after he left. She thought about the woman in the photograph, about a man who'd loved someone enough that 3 years later he still couldn't talk about her without his whole body going rigid. She thought about how similar they were, really. Two people who'd lost everything. Two people who'd learned that love was just another word for loss. She lay down on the rug, pulled the blankets over herself, and closed her eyes. Outside, the blizzard screamed. Coulter woke to the smell of coffee. He sat up fast, disoriented. The light coming through the gaps in the curtain was gray and weak. Early morning. The fire was crackling, and someone was moving around in his kitchen. He grabbed his shirt, pulled it on, and stepped out. Evelyn stood at the stove, her back to him. She'd changed into the dry clothes he'd left for her, his old work shirt hanging loose on her frame, and a pair of wool socks that came up past her knees. Her hair was pulled back in a braid. She was pouring coffee into 2 cups. "You're still here," Coulter said. She turned, startled. "You said not to leave before morning. It's morning." He looked past her at the window. Snow was still falling, thick and heavy. "Storm hasn't stopped." "I know." She held out one of the cups. "I made coffee. I hope that's all right. I found the grounds in the tin by the stove." He took the cup. It was strong, hot, exactly how he liked it. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "You fed me, gave me shelter. This is the least I can do." She turned back to the stove. "I'm making breakfast too. You had eggs. They're a little old, but they'll cook fine." "Those were for—" He stopped himself. "For what?" "Nothing. Doesn't matter." But it did matter. Those eggs had been for emergencies, for the lean times. He'd been rationing everything, trying to make his supplies last through the winter because he couldn't get to town in weather like this. And now she was using them. He should have been angry. Should have told her to stop. But he just stood there watching her cook and felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. His cabin felt lived in. Evelyn worked efficiently, her movements practiced. She'd meant it when she said she could cook. The eggs came out fluffy. She'd found his last bit of salt pork and fried it crispy, even toasted the bread over the open flame. When she handed him a plate, he stared at it. "Something wrong?" she asked. "No." He sat down at the table. "Just been a while since anyone cooked for me." She sat across from him with her own plate. They ate in silence. The wind rattled the shutters. Snow hissed against the walls. "How long do these storms usually last?" Evelyn asked. "Depends. Could be days. Could be a week." Her face paled slightly. "A week?" "Sometimes longer." She set her fork down. "I can't stay here that long. You don't have the food for 2 people. I've already taken too much. We'll manage. I won't be a burden on you." "Didn't say you were." "You didn't have to." She stood abruptly, started gathering the plates. "I'll find a way to leave as soon as the snow lets up even a little. I promise." Coulter caught her wrist. Not hard, just enough to stop her. "You go out there before this storm breaks, you'll die," he said. "Is that what you want?" She looked down at his hand on her wrist, then at his face. "What I want doesn't matter. I can't just live off your charity." "It's not charity, it's survival." He released her. "You want to help? Fine. There's work to do. Cabin needs cleaning, clothes need mending, fire needs tending. You do that, we're even." She studied him for a long moment. "Why are you being kind to me?" The question caught him off guard. He didn't have a good answer, didn't really understand it himself. "Not kind," he said finally. "Just practical. You die on my land, that's my problem." It was a lie, and they both knew it. But Evelyn nodded slowly. "All right, then I'll earn my keep." Oh, the storm lasted 4 days. 4 days of wind that sounded like wolves howling. 4 days of snow that piled up past the windows. 4 days trapped inside a cabin that was only supposed to hold one person and all their ghosts. Evelyn made herself useful. She cleaned the cabin from top to bottom, scrubbing floors Coulter hadn't even realized were dirty. She went through his clothes and mended every tear, every loose button, every frayed hem. She reorganized his stores, finding food he'd forgotten he had. She cooked 3 meals a day, somehow making his meager supplies stretch further than they had any right to. And slowly, quietly, the cabin began to feel different. Coulter noticed small things. The way she hummed while she worked, the way she'd folded his clothes and stacked them neatly on the shelf. The way the fire never went out now because she tended it constantly. The way she'd cry sometimes at night when she thought he was asleep. He never said anything, just listened to her muffled sobs from the other side of the curtain and felt that familiar ache in his chest. The one that said, "You can't fix this. You can't fix anyone." On the 3rd night, he woke to silence. No wind, no crying. He got up and looked out. Evelyn sat by the fire, her knees pulled to her chest, staring into the flames. She wasn't crying, just hollow. "Can't sleep?" Coulter asked. She jumped. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't." He moved to the fire, added another log. "Storm's dying down." "I know." She said it like a death sentence. He sat down on the floor across from her. The fire crackled between them. "Tell me about the war," he said. She looked at him, surprised. "Why?" "You said you were a nurse, must have stories." "Not good ones." "I didn't ask for good ones." Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. Then she started talking. She told him about the hospital tents, the endless rows of dying boys, the ones who called for their mothers, the ones who just stared at the ceiling, the ones she'd held while they bled out because there weren't enough doctors, weren't enough supplies, weren't enough anything. She told him about the day the fever came through and killed half the staff, how she'd worked for 3 days straight without sleep, how she'd watched her best friend die in the same beds they'd been trying to save others from. She told him about the silence after, the way she couldn't go home because home didn't exist anymore, the way she'd wandered from town to town, trying to find something that felt like purpose. She told him about the letter from Howard Marsh, how it had seemed like a sign, a chance to start over, to build something new. "I was so stupid," she whispered. "I should have known better." "You weren't stupid," Coulter said. "You were desperate. There's a difference." She looked at him, really looked at him. "Tell me about her," Evelyn said softly. "Your wife." Coulter's jaw tightened. "Nothing to tell. I told you my story. That was your choice." "Please." He wanted to say no, wanted to walk away. But something in her eyes stopped him. Maybe it was the fact that she'd been honest with him. Maybe it was the fact that for 3 days she'd brought life back into this dead cabin. Maybe he was just tired of carrying it alone. "Her name was Sarah," he said. "Met her in town. She was working at the boarding house. I was just a ranch hand back then, saving up to buy my own land. She was bright. That's the word for it. Everything about her was bright." His hands curled into fists. "We got married, bought this land together, built this cabin. She wanted children, a whole house full of them. I told her we'd have time." The fire popped. A log collapsed into embers. "Winter of '84, she got sick," Coulter continued. "Fever. Started slow, just a cough. Then it got worse. I rode to town for the doctor, but the roads were iced over. Took me 2 days. By the time we got back, he stopped, swallowed hard. She was already gone. I'd left her alone. She died alone. Evelyn's hand moved across the space between them and covered his. It wasn't your fault, she said. I left her. You were trying to save her. Didn't matter, end result was the same. They sat like that for a while. Her hand on his, the fire burning low. Two broken people sharing silence. Do you ever wonder, Evelyn said quietly, if we're being punished? For surviving when they didn't? Coulter looked at her, at the tears finally spilling down her cheeks, at the way she held herself together even when she was falling apart. Every day, he said. She squeezed his hand, and for the first time in 3 years, Coulter didn't pull away. On the fourth morning, the storm finally broke. Coulter woke to sunlight streaming through the window. Real sunlight, bright and cold and clear. He got up, pushed the door open, and stepped outside. The world was buried. Snow covered everything, the porch, the fence post, the path to the barn. But the sky was blue, painfully blue. Behind him, he heard Evelyn emerge from the cabin. It's beautiful, she breathed. It was. In a harsh, unforgiving way, Coulter looked at the ridge in the distance, at the place where Sarah was buried. The snow had covered the marker, covered everything. I need to check the fence lines, he said. Make sure nothing broke in the storm. I'll come with you. No need. I want to help. He turned to her. She stood on the porch in his too big coat, her breath clouding in the air, her chin set with determination. It's hard work, he warned. I'm not afraid of hard work. So they went together. It took all day. They trudged through waist-deep snow, checking every post, every wire. Coulter worked in silence, but Evelyn was there beside him, pulling her weight, never complaining even when her lips turned blue from the cold. When they found a section of fence that had collapsed under the weight of the snow, she helped him dig it out, helped him reset the posts, held the wire while he hammered. She was strong, stronger than she looked. By the time they made it back to the cabin, the sun was setting. They were both exhausted, frozen, and covered in snow. But when Evelyn smiled at him, really smiled, for the first time since she'd arrived, Coulter felt something shift in his chest. Something that felt dangerously close to hope. Balak. That night after dinner, Evelyn said, I should go to town tomorrow. Coulter's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Why? To find work, see if anyone needs help. She kept her eyes on her plate. You've been kind, but I can't stay here forever. Roads won't be clear yet. I'll manage. You'll freeze. I've frozen before. He set his fork down hard. This is about what you said, about not being a burden. It is what it is. You're not a burden. I'm eating your food, sleeping in your home. I have to... Stop. He stood up, suddenly angry. Not at her, at everything. Just stop. You want to leave? Fine. Go. But don't pretend it's about being practical. You're running because that's what you do. Her head snapped up. Excuse me? You heard me. Things get hard, you run. Someone treats you badly, you run. You ran all the way out here from town. Now you're running again. That's not fair. Isn't it? She stood too, her hands shaking. You don't know anything about me. I know you're scared. Of course I'm scared. The words burst out of her. I'm terrified. Do you know what happens to women like me? Women with no money, no family, no husband? We disappear. We end up in brothels or dead in ditches or married to men who beat us because we don't have any other choice. So yes, I'm scared. And yes, I run because that's how I survive. Her chest was heaving. Tears streamed down her face. Coulter stepped around the table, stood in front of her. You don't have to survive anymore, he said quietly. You can just live. I don't know how. Neither do I. They stared at each other. The cabin was silent except for the fire and their breathing. Then Evelyn whispered, What are we doing? I don't know. This is crazy. Probably. I should go. You should. But neither of them moved. Coulter reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he cupped her face in his calloused hand. Her skin was soft, warm. "Stay," he said. "Just a little longer." Evelyn closed her eyes, leaned into his touch. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." The next week passed in a rhythm Coulter had forgotten existed. Wake before dawn, build the fire, cook breakfast together in comfortable silence, work until the sun went down, eat dinner, sit by the fire, sleep, repeat. Simple, almost peaceful, almost. Because underneath it all was the knowledge that this couldn't last, that eventually Evelyn would have to leave or stay, and either choice felt impossible. Coulter tried not to think about it, tried to focus on the work. There was always work. Fences to mend, firewood to chop, snow to clear. The kind of labor that kept a man's hands busy and his mind quiet. But Evelyn made it hard to stay quiet. She talked while they worked, not constantly, not in a way that grated. Just occasional observations. Comments about the weather, questions about the ranch, stories from her past that she'd drop into the silence like stones into a well. "I had a brother once," she said one afternoon while they were stacking firewood. "Thomas. He was younger than me by 3 years. Died at Antietam." Coulter set a log on the pile. "I'm sorry." "He was 17, lied about his age to enlist." She laughed bitterly. "My mother never forgave him for that. Or me." "Why you?" "I encouraged him, told him it was noble, that he'd be a hero." She hurled a piece of wood onto the stack hard enough to make the whole thing wobble. "What did I know? I was 20 years old and stupid. I thought war was glory and sacrifice. I didn't know it was just blood and screaming and boys dying in mud." Coulter steadied the woodpile. "You couldn't have known." "I should have." She wiped her eyes roughly. "My mother died 2 years after Thomas. Fever, same as your wife. I was working at the hospital. I couldn't leave. By the time I got home, she was already buried. The neighbors said her last words were his name, not mine. His." She picked up another log. Her hands were shaking. "You did what you could," Coulter said. "It wasn't enough. It's never enough." She looked at him. "Does it get easier? The guilt?" He thought about Sarah, about the way he'd left her alone, about the 3 years he'd spent trying to work himself to death so he wouldn't have to feel anything. "No," he said. "You just get better at carrying it." Evelyn nodded slowly, like she'd expected that answer. They finished the wood in silence. That night, Coulter woke to the sound of crying again. But this time, when he got up and looked, Evelyn wasn't by the fire. She was standing at the window, her forehead pressed against the cold glass, her shoulders shaking. He should have gone back to bed, should have given her privacy. Instead, he walked over and stood beside her. "Can't sleep?" he asked. She jumped, turned. Her face was streaked with tears. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." "Stop apologizing. She pressed her hands to her face. "I keep thinking about Red Hollow, about the way they looked at me, like I was dirt, like I deserved what happened." "You didn't." "The women were the worst. They whispered, called me names. One of them spat at me." She laughed shakily. "I've survived a war. I've held dying men in my arms. But somehow that was worse. The judgment, the contempt." Coulter's hands curled into fists. "Who spat at you?" "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me." She looked at him, surprised. "Why?" "Because you're under my roof. Because you're—" He stopped himself, didn't finish that thought. "Because it's wrong," he said instead. Evelyn turned back to the window. Outside, the moon was bright on the snow. Everything was blue and silver and cold. "I thought coming west would be different," she said quietly. "I thought maybe out here, where everything's hard, people would be kinder, less quick to judge. But they're the same everywhere, aren't they? Cruel. Some of them. Most of them." "Not all." She glanced at him. "You really believe that?" Coulter thought about the years he'd spent alone, the way the townspeople had stopped coming to check on him after the first winter, the way they'd left him to his grief because it was easier than dealing with it. "I believe people mostly look out for themselves," he said, "but sometimes they surprise you. Like you did." "I'm not—" "You are." She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the silver tracks of tears on her cheeks. "You didn't have to help me. You could have sent me away. Most men would have. But you didn't."
I'm not most men. I know. The words hung between them. Coulter felt something tighten in his chest, something that felt dangerous and warm and terrifying. You should get some sleep, he said roughly. I'm not tired. Try anyway. She smiled faintly. Yes, sir.
But she didn't move. Neither did he. Then, so quietly he almost didn't hear it, she said, "Thank you, Coulter, for everything." Before he could respond, she turned and walked back to the fire, curled up in her blankets, closed her eyes. Coulter stood at the window for a long time, watching the moonlight on the snow, trying to ignore the way his heart was beating too fast. This was a mistake. He knew it. Knew it the way you know a storm is coming from the smell of the air, but he couldn't seem to stop it. The next morning, Evelyn woke him before dawn. "Coulter." She shook his shoulder. "Coulter, wake up." He sat up fast, reaching for the rifle he kept by the bed. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. But look." She pulled back the curtain. Outside, the sky was turning pink, and in the distance, moving slowly across the snow, was a figure on horseback. Coulter swore under his breath. "Someone's coming." He dressed quickly, strapped on his gun belt, and stepped outside. The cold hit him like a fist. His breath clouded in front of his face. The rider was closer now, close enough to make out details. A man, older, wearing a heavy coat and a wide-brimmed hat. He rode a tired-looking bay horse. Coulter recognized him. Ben Cartwright. Ran a small ranch about 10 miles east. Good man, quiet, minded his own business. "Ben," Coulter called when the man got close enough. "What brings you out here?" Ben reined in his horse. His face was grim. "Coulter, sorry to disturb you so early. I need help." "What kind of help?" "It's my daughter. Rose. She's sick. Fever. My wife's beside herself. We tried to get to town, but the roads are still too rough. I remembered you had someone staying with you. Woman from Red Hollow. Heard she was a nurse." Coulter felt his stomach drop. "Who told you that? Talk travels. Even in winter." Ben looked desperate. "Please, Rose is only 6 years old. She's burning up. We don't know what to do." Behind Coulter, the cabin door opened. Evelyn stepped out, wrapped in a blanket. "I'll come," she said immediately. "You don't have to—" Coulter started. "A child is sick. Of course I'm coming." She turned to Ben. "How long has she had the fever?" 3 days. "Is she eating?" "A little. Mostly water." "Breathing problems?" "Some. She coughs a lot." Evelyn nodded, already moving back into the cabin. "I need to get my things. Coulter, do you have any willow bark?" "Honey?" "Some." "Good. Bring it. And clean cloth, as much as you have." She moved like a different person, focused, efficient. The scared woman who'd collapsed in his cabin was gone. In her place was someone who'd done this before, many times. 10 minutes later, they were riding out. Evelyn sat behind Coulter on his horse, her arms wrapped around his waist, a satchel of supplies slung over her shoulder. Ben led the way. The ride took almost an hour. By the time they reached the Cartwright place, the sun was fully up. The ranch was small, just a cabin and a barn and a handful of outbuildings. But it looked well kept. Ben's wife, Mary, met them at the door. Her eyes were red from crying. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Thank you so much." "Where is she?" Evelyn asked. Mary led them inside. The cabin was warm but smelled like sickness. In a small bed near the fire, a little girl lay motionless. Her face was flushed. Her breathing was shallow and raspy. Evelyn knelt beside her immediately, pressed her hand to the girl's forehead, listened to her breathing, checked her pulse. "How long has she been like this?" she asked. "Since last night," Mary said. "She was talking yesterday morning, playing. Then she just collapsed." Evelyn's face was calm, but Coulter saw the tension in her shoulders. "I need hot water and cold water, separate bowls. Do you have any chamomile, peppermint? I have some dried herbs. Good, bring them all. And I need everyone out except the mother." "I can help," Coulter said. Evelyn glanced at him. "Then stay. Everyone else, out." Ben hesitated, looking at his daughter. Then he nodded and left, closing the door behind him. Evelyn worked quickly. She mixed the willow bark into hot water, let it steep, then carefully spooned small amounts into the girl's mouth. Most of it dribbled out, but some went down. "Hold her head up," she told Mary. Just a little. We need to get fluids into her or the fever will kill her before the sickness does. Mary did as she was told, tears streaming down her face. Is she going to die? Not if I can help it. Evelyn soaked a cloth in cold water and pressed it to the girl's forehead. Coulter, I need you to keep changing these. Cold water, wring them out, put them on her forehead, neck, and wrists. We have to bring the fever down. He moved to her side, started doing exactly as she said. They worked like that for hours. Evelyn gave the girl medicine, forced water down her throat, listened to her breathing. Coulter changed the cloths over and over until his hands were numb from the cold water. Mary held her daughter and prayed quietly. By midday, the girl's fever finally started to drop. By evening, she opened her eyes. Mama? She whispered. Mary sobbed and pulled her daughter into her arms. Oh, Rose. Oh, my baby. Evelyn sat back on her heels, exhausted. Her hands were shaking. Her dress was soaked with water and sweat. Coulter touched her shoulder. You did it. She shook her head. She's not out of danger yet. The fever could come back. We need to watch her through the night. Then we'll watch. And they did. All night. Evelyn dozed in a chair beside the bed, waking every hour to check on Rose. Coulter kept the fire going and made sure there was always hot water ready. Mary refused to leave her daughter's side. By morning, Rose was sitting up, asking for food. Mary cried. Ben shook Evelyn's hand so hard Coulter thought he might break it. You saved her life, Ben said, his voice thick. I don't know how to repay you. You don't need to, Evelyn said quietly. We don't have much, but really, it's all right. But Ben insisted. He pressed a small pouch into her hands. It's not much. Just a little money we'd been saving. Please, take it. Evelyn tried to refuse, but Mary stopped her. You gave us our daughter back, Mary said. Let us give you something. So Evelyn took it, tucked it into her pocket, thanked them quietly. When they left, the sun was just rising again. Coulter and Evelyn rode back toward the ranch in silence. She was slumped against his back, barely awake. You're exhausted, he said. I'm all right. You haven't slept in 2 days. I've gone longer. That doesn't make it better. She laughed softly. You worry too much. Someone has to. They rode for a while without talking. Then Evelyn said, That's what I used to do. Before. Save people. Make them better. I'd forgotten what it felt like. What does it feel like? Like maybe I'm not completely useless. Coulter pulled the horse to a stop, turned in the saddle to look at her. You're not useless, he said firmly. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. She stared at him. You barely know me. I know enough. Something shifted in her expression, softened. Take me home, Coulter, she said quietly. Home. She'd said home. He turned back around and urged the horse forward. The words stayed with him the whole ride back. When they got to the cabin, Evelyn went straight to bed and slept for 14 hours. Coulter worked outside, trying not to think about what Ben had said. Talk travels. People knew Evelyn was here. People were talking about it. And in a place like Montana, that meant eventually someone would come asking questions. He told himself it didn't matter. Told himself he didn't care what people thought. But he did care. Not for himself. For her. Because he knew what they'd say. What they'd assume. A single woman living alone with a single man. It didn't matter that nothing had happened. It didn't matter that she slept by the fire and he slept in his bed and they barely touched except by accident. People would make it dirty. Make it shameful. And Evelyn had been through enough shame already. That night, after she woke up, they sat by the fire and ate a quiet dinner. Evelyn seemed different, lighter somehow, like saving Rose had reminded her of something she'd lost. I've been thinking, she said, breaking the silence. About? Staying. Coulter's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. What? Not forever. Just longer. If that's all right with you. She looked down at her plate. People need help out here. I could be useful. I could work. Maybe travel between ranches. Offer medical care. People would pay. Not much, but enough. You'd do that? Travel alone? I've done worse. That's not an answer. She met his eyes. I want to stay, Coulter, if you'll let me. He should have said no. Should have told her it was a bad idea. That people would talk. That she deserved better than a dead woman's cabin and a man who didn't know how to be alive anymore. But what he said was,
You can stay as long as you want. Her face lit up. Actually lit up. And Coulter felt something in his chest crack open. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me yet. Winter's not over. You might change your mind. I won't. She said it with such certainty that he almost believed her. Over the next week, word spread. The nurse who saved Ben Cartwright's daughter, the woman staying at the Hayes Ranch. People started showing up. First it was Martha Donnelly, an older woman with arthritis so bad she could barely walk. Evelyn made her a salve from herbs and animal fat, taught her exercises to keep her joints moving. Then it was young Jacob Miller, who'd gotten his hand caught in a fence and needed stitches. Evelyn sewed him up with steady hands while he tried not to cry. Then a woman named Alice with a baby who wouldn't stop crying. Evelyn figured out the baby had colic and showed Alice how to help. One after another, they came. Some paid in money, most paid in food, firewood, favors. Coulter's stores, which had been dangerously low, started filling up again, and Evelyn bloomed. She smiled more, laughed sometimes, moved through the cabin with purpose instead of shame. Coulter watched her and felt something he thought was dead come back to life. It scared the hell out of him. One night, about 2 weeks after Rose's fever broke, Coulter was outside chopping wood when he heard hoofbeats. He looked up to see a woman riding toward the cabin. She was young, maybe 19, and she rode like someone who'd been doing it since before she could walk. When she got close, he recognized her. Emma Harris, our daughter of John Harris, who ran the largest ranch in the valley. Mr. Hayes, she said, reining in her horse. I'm looking for the nurse. Is she here? She's inside. What's wrong? It's my father. He's been coughing for weeks. Won't see a doctor. Won't admit anything's wrong. But it's getting worse. My mother's worried. Sick. Emma's voice cracked. Please, can she come? Evelyn appeared in the doorway. I heard. Let me get my things. 5 minutes later, they were riding out again. Emma led them to the Harris Ranch, which was huge compared to Coulter's place. Big house, multiple barns, acres of fenced land. John Harris was in bed, looking pale and weak. When he saw Evelyn, he scowled. Don't need a nurse, he muttered. Your daughter thinks you do, Evelyn said calmly, and from the sound of that cough, I agree. It's nothing. Let me be the judge of that. She examined him thoroughly, listened to his lungs, checked his pulse, asked questions he didn't want to answer. Finally, she sat back. You have pneumonia, early stages, but it'll get worse if you don't rest and take medicine. I've got work to do. You'll have a grave to fill if you don't listen to me. John stared at her. Then, surprisingly, he laughed. You don't pull punches, do you? I don't have time for it. You need bed rest, hot liquids, and this. She pulled out a bottle of medicine she'd mixed. 3 times a day. No exceptions. And if I don't? Then you'll die, your wife will be a widow, and your daughter will have to run this ranch alone. Your choice. John looked at his daughter, at his wife, then back at Evelyn. Fine, he grumbled, but I don't like it. You don't have to like it. You just have to do it. Evelyn stayed at the Harris Ranch for 2 days, monitoring John's condition. Coulter stayed too, helping with ranch work to make up for the family's lost labor. On the second night, Emma found Coulter in the barn. Thank you for bringing her, Emma said. My father's already breathing easier. She's good at what she does. She's more than good. Emma paused. Is it true what they're saying, that she's living with you? Coulter's jaw tightened. She's staying at my ranch. There's a difference. People are talking. Let them talk. They're saying cruel things, that she's your... Emma stopped, blushing. Well, you know. I know, and they're wrong. Emma studied him. You care about her. It wasn't a question. She needed help, Coulter said. I helped her, that's all. Is it? He didn't answer, because he didn't know anymore. When they got back to the cabin 2 days later, Evelyn was quiet. She made dinner without humming, sat by the fire without talking. What's wrong? Coulter finally asked. Emma told me what people are saying. Damn. Don't listen to them. How can I not? They think I'm... She stopped, took a breath. They think I'm your mistress, or worse. Does it matter what they think? Of course it matters. I'm trying to build something here, a reputation. How can I do that if everyone thinks I'm... She pressed her hands to her face. Maybe I should leave.
Find somewhere else. Somewhere people don't know. No. Coulter. No. He stood up. You're not running again, not because of gossip, not because small-minded people can't understand that a man and woman can live under the same roof without it being shameful. But you want to know what I think? He crossed the room, stood in front of her. I think you're the bravest person I've ever met. I think you've survived things that would have broken most people. I think you came west alone, got thrown away like trash, and instead of giving up, you're saving lives. His voice roughened. I think anyone who looks at you and sees anything other than someone worth respecting is a damn fool. Evelyn stared at him. You really believe that? Every word. She stood slowly. They were close now. Close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her eyes. Close enough to feel the heat coming off her skin. What are we doing, Coulter? She whispered. I don't know. People will talk. Let them. It'll make your life harder. My life's already hard. I don't want to be another burden you carry. You're not a burden. He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His hand lingered on her cheek. You're the opposite of a burden. She leaned into his touch, closed her eyes. I'm scared, she said. Of what? Of this. Of wanting something I can't have. Who says you can't have it? Life. Experience. Every single time I've tried to build something, it gets taken away. Coulter understood that. The fear of losing something precious. The way it made you want to push it away before it could hurt you. But he was tired of being afraid. Maybe this time is different, he said. Evelyn opened her eyes, looked at him like she was searching for something, for proof, for permission. Then she kissed him. It was soft, tentative, like she expected him to pull away. He didn't. He pulled her closer instead, kissed her back. Let himself feel everything he'd been pushing down for weeks, months, years. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. Coulter, Evelyn whispered, I know. This is complicated. I know. People will... I don't care. He rested his forehead against hers. I don't care what they say. I care about you. She made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. When did that happen? I think it started the moment you asked for just one night. She kissed him again. Harder this time. More certain. And for the first time since Sarah died, Coulter let himself hope that maybe, just maybe, he deserved something good. They didn't talk about the kiss. Not the next morning or the morning after that. They just went back to their routine, cooking, working, sitting by the fire. Except now there was a tension in the air that hadn't been there before. Not uncomfortable, just present, like something waiting. Coulter caught himself watching her, the way she moved through the cabin, the way she laughed when old Mrs. Patterson came by with her bad knee and told dirty jokes that made even Coulter blush. The way Evelyn's hands were always busy, mending, mixing medicine, kneading bread. She caught him watching once, raised an eyebrow. Something on your mind? She asked. No. Liar. He looked away. Went back to oiling his rifle, but he could feel her smiling. 3 weeks after the kiss, Coulter had to go into Red Hollow for supplies. He'd been putting it off, but they were low on flour and salt, and winter wasn't done with them yet. I'm coming with you, Evelyn said when he told her. You don't have to. I know, but I should. People need to see that I'm not hiding. Evelyn, I'm not afraid of them anymore, Coulter. Let them stare. So they rode into town together on a gray morning that threatened snow. Red Hollow was small, just one main street with a general store, a saloon, a boarding house, and a building that served as both schoolhouse and meeting hall. The church sat on a hill overlooking everything, white paint peeling in the wind. Coulter tied the horse outside the general store. When they walked in, the conversation died. The store owner, a man named Albert Sykes, looked up from behind the counter. His eyes went from Coulter to Evelyn and back again. Hayes, he said carefully, what can I do for you? Need flour, salt, sugar if you've got it. I've got it. Albert's gaze slid to Evelyn. Ma'am. Mr. Sykes, Evelyn said evenly. 2 women were browsing near the fabric. Coulter recognized them, Judith Crane and her sister Dorothy. They were whispering to each other, not even trying to hide it. Albert gathered the supplies in silence.
The tension in the store was thick enough to choke on. Then Judith spoke up, her voice carrying across the room. I heard you've been making house calls, Miss Pierce. How enterprising. Evelyn turned. I'm a nurse. It's what I do. Is that what they're calling it now? Dorothy tittered. Coulter felt his hands curl into fists, but Evelyn touched his arm lightly. A warning. Let me handle this. If you have something to say, Mrs. Crane, say it clearly, Evelyn said. Judith's smile was poison. I'm just surprised you have time for nursing. What with all your other duties? What duties would those be? Well, keeping house for Mr. Hayes, cooking his meals, warming his bed. Coulter stepped forward. Watch your mouth. Oh, did I strike a nerve? Judith's eyes gleamed. Everyone knows what's going on out at your ranch. A single woman living alone with a man. It's scandalous. She's a nurse helping people, Coulter said coldly. That's all you need to know. Is it? Because it looks an awful lot like she's playing house with a widower who should know better. That's enough, Albert said quietly. Ladies, if you're not buying anything, maybe you should leave. But Judith wasn't done. She turned to Evelyn. You came here as a mail-order bride. Got rejected because the man who sent for you realized what you were. Now you've latched onto another lonely fool. Tell me, Miss Pierce, how long until you move on to the next one? The store went silent. Evelyn stood very still. Her face was pale, but her voice didn't shake. You're right about one thing, Mrs. Crane. I came here to marry a man who turned out to be a liar and a cheat. He took my money and left me to freeze. I nearly died. She stepped closer. But I didn't, and now I'm helping people, saving lives. What exactly have you done lately besides spread poison? Judith's face flushed red. How dare you? I dare because I've got nothing left to lose. You want to talk about me? Fine. Talk. But it won't change the fact that when John Harris was dying of pneumonia, his family called for me. When Rose Cartwright had a fever that could have killed her, they called for me. When your own husband cut his hand last week and it got infected, he came to my door. Evelyn's voice was steady, hard. So say what you want. I'll still be here. I'll still do my work. And when you or someone you love gets sick, you'll still come knocking. She turned and walked out. Coulter grabbed the supplies, threw money on the counter, and followed her. Outside, Evelyn was standing by the horse, her arms wrapped around herself. She was shaking. You all right? Coulter asked. No. Her voice was tight. But I will be. He loaded the supplies into the saddlebags. Behind them, he could hear voices inside the store, more whispering, more judgment. We should go, he said. Wait. Evelyn turned toward the church. I need to do something first. She walked up the hill before he could stop her. Coulter cursed and followed. The church was small inside, plain wooden benches, a simple altar. A man in his 50s stood near the front, arranging hymnals. He looked up when they entered. Miss Pierce, he said. His voice was neutral, careful. Reverend Mills. Evelyn walked down the aisle. I need to see the marriage records, the ones for Howard Marsh. The Reverend's expression didn't change. I'm not sure that's... You keep records of all betrothals, don't you? Letters of intent, contracts. I want to see mine. Miss Pierce, I don't think... Please, her voice cracked. I need to know if it was real. If I'm legally bound to him. If he has any claim on me. The Reverend looked at Coulter, then back at Evelyn. Finally, he sighed and went to a cabinet near the altar. He pulled out a ledger, flipped through pages, and stopped. There's nothing here, he said quietly. No marriage license, no contract, no record of Howard Marsh ever filing intent to marry anyone. Evelyn went very still. Nothing? Nothing official. If he sent you letters, they were his own invention, not sanctioned by the church or the law. So you're not bound to anyone, Miss Pierce. You never were. Evelyn's knees buckled. Coulter caught her before she fell. Thank you, she whispered to the Reverend. Then to Coulter, take me home. He did. They didn't talk on the ride back. Evelyn sat behind him, her arms around his waist, her face pressed against his back. He could feel her crying silently. When they got to the cabin, she went straight inside and sat by the fire. Coulter put away the supplies and the horse, then came in and sat beside her. "I was so stupid," she said finally. "You weren't." I believed him. I believed every word in those letters. He wrote about building a life together, about wanting a partner, about being lonely, and I was so desperate to believe someone wanted me that I didn't question any of it. That doesn't make you stupid. It makes you human. She laughed bitterly. Human. Right. That's what Judith Crane thinks I am. Something less than human. Judith Crane is a miserable woman who makes herself feel better by tearing others down. Don't give her that power. Easy for you to say. You're not the one they're calling a... She stopped, shook her head. A what? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. She looked at him. Her eyes were red. A whore, Coulter. They're calling me a whore. The word hit him like a punch. He stood up, anger flooding through him. Who? Does it matter? They're all thinking it. Tell me who said it. Coulter. Tell me. She sighed. I heard Dorothy say it to someone outside the store. She didn't know I could hear, said I was probably warming your bed for a roof over my head. Coulter headed for the door. Where are you going? To have a conversation with Dorothy Crane. Evelyn jumped up and grabbed his arm. No, don't. It'll just make everything worse. I don't care. Well, I do. She pulled him back. This is my fight, Coulter. My reputation, and going into town and threatening people won't help. So what? You just let them say whatever they want? For now, yes, because eventually they'll need me. They'll get sick or hurt, and they'll have to come to me. And when they do, I'll help them anyway. That's how I win, by being better than them. He stared at her, at the determination in her face, the strength. You're a better person than I am, he said. No, I'm just tired of fighting battles I can't win. She let go of his arm, sat back down. I just want to live my life. Help people. Maybe be happy for once. Is that too much to ask? Coulter sat beside her, took her hand. No, it's not. They sat in silence for a while. The fire crackled. Outside, snow started to fall again. Coulter, Evelyn said softly. What are we doing? Really? What do you mean? This. Us. I'm living in your house. People think we're... She stopped, started again. If we keep going like this, the talk will never stop. It'll ruin both of us. I don't care about talk. Maybe you should. You have a ranch, a reputation. People respect you. I don't want their respect. What do you want? The question hung between them. Coulter looked at her, really looked at her, at the woman who'd stumbled into his life, half frozen and desperate. The woman who'd brought his cabin back to life, who made him laugh, who made him feel things he'd thought were dead. I want you to stay, he said, not as a guest, not as a nurse who happens to live here. I want you to stay because this is your home. Evelyn's breath caught. Coulter, I know it's fast. I know it's complicated, but I don't care. He squeezed her hand. You asked me what I want. That's what I want. People will... Let them. I'm done living my life based on what other people think. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, I want to stay too, but I'm scared. Of what? Of losing this. Of it being taken away like everything else. It won't be. You don't know that. You're right. I don't. He cupped her face in his hands. But I'd rather have this and risk losing it than never have it at all. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. When did you get so brave? The moment I decided to let you stay. She kissed him then, long and slow and full of everything they weren't saying. When they pulled apart, Coulter said, We should go back to town. Evelyn blinked. What? Why? Because I'm going to tell everyone who'll listen that you're under my protection, that anyone who insults you insults me, and that if they have a problem with it, they can take it up with me directly. Coulter, I'm not asking permission. He stood up. Get your coat. She stared at him. Then she started laughing. You're insane. Probably. You coming or not? She got her coat. They rode back into Red Hollow just as the sun was setting. The town was quieter now. Most people had gone home for dinner. But the saloon was open, and Coulter could see figures moving inside. He tied up the horse and walked in. The saloon went silent. A dozen men looked up from their drinks.
Coulter recognized most of them: ranchers, store workers, drifters passing through. Hayes, one of them said, Jack Morrison, a hand from the Bar T Ranch. Didn't expect to see you twice in one day. Need to say something, Coulter said. And I want witnesses. That got their attention. Even the bartender stopped wiping glasses. Coulter pulled Evelyn forward gently. She looked nervous, but she didn't pull away. Most of you know Miss Pierce, he said. She's been staying at my ranch, working as a nurse, helping people. He paused. Some of you have been talking, saying things about her character, about what she is to me. The room shifted uncomfortably. So I'm here to set the record straight, Coulter continued. Miss Pierce is a good woman, a skilled nurse, and anyone who says otherwise will answer to me, personally. That's some kind of threat, Hayes? Someone called from the back. It's a promise. Jack Morrison stood up slowly. He was a big man, broad-shouldered and mean when he drank. You saying we can't talk about your whore? Coulter moved before he could think. His fist connected with Jack's jaw hard enough to send the man sprawling. Chairs scraped. Men jumped back. Jack got to his feet, blood on his lip. You son of a... Call her that again, Coulter said quietly. Please. Jack looked at him, at the cold fury in Coulter's eyes. Then he spat blood on the floor and sat back down. Ain't worth it. Coulter turned to the rest of the room. Anyone else? Silence. Then the door opened behind them. Coulter turned to see Reverend Mills standing in the entrance, snow on his shoulders. I heard there was trouble, the Reverend said. No trouble, Coulter said. Just a misunderstanding. Reverend Mills looked at Evelyn, then at Coulter, then at the room full of men. Miss Pierce saved John Harris's life, the Reverend said quietly. She saved Rose Cartwright. She's helped dozens of people in this valley, asking for almost nothing in return. I don't know what you all have been saying about her, but I know what I've seen, and what I've seen is a woman of character and skill. He paused. Anyone who says different is a liar. The room shifted again. Different this time. Thank you, Reverend, Evelyn said softly. The Reverend nodded, then he left. Coulter looked around the saloon one more time. We done here? No one spoke. He took Evelyn's hand and walked out. Outside, she was shaking again, but this time she was smiling. You hit him, she said. He deserved it. You could have been killed. Worth it. She laughed. Actually laughed. You're completely insane. You said that already. It bears repeating. She turned to face him. Snow was falling around them, catching in her hair. Thank you. Don't thank me for doing what's right. Still, thank you. They rode home in the dark. When they got to the cabin, Evelyn started to head for her usual spot by the fire, but Coulter caught her hand. Don't, he said. Don't what? Don't sleep by the fire anymore. Her eyes widened. Coulter? I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. But I'm tired of pretending, tired of sleeping in separate parts of the cabin like we're strangers. He squeezed her hand. Sleep in the bed. With me. Just sleep. That's all. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. They lay down together that night, fully clothed, on top of the blankets. Coulter wrapped his arm around her. She pressed her back against his chest. This is dangerous, she whispered. I know. People will say we're so... They already do. Might as well be comfortable while they talk. She laughed softly. Then she laced her fingers through his and held on tight. For the first time in 3 years, Coulter fell asleep feeling whole. The next few weeks were different, better. Evelyn still worked as a nurse, still traveled to other ranches when people needed help, but she came home to Coulter, to their cabin, to the life they were building together. People still talked, but the tone changed. The Reverend's words had weight. And when Ben Cartwright started telling everyone who'd listen that Evelyn had saved his daughter's life, others began to listen too. Then one morning, a wagon pulled up outside the cabin. Coulter was chopping wood. He looked up to see a family, a man, a woman, and a little girl, maybe 8 years old. They looked tired, poor. The wagon was loaded with everything they owned. Can I help you? Coulter asked. The man climbed down. He was thin, weathered. Name's Peter Grant. This is my wife, Anne, and my daughter, Maisie. We're heading west, hoping to find work. Our wagon broke an axle about 2 miles back. We managed to fix it, but we're low on food. Low on everything, really. I was hoping... He stopped, embarrassed. I was hoping you might be able to spare some supplies. I can work. I'm strong. I can do a day's labor in exchange. Coulter looked at the family, at the little girl shivering in the cold, at the desperation in her parents' eyes. Come inside, but, he said, it's too cold to talk out here. He brought them into the cabin. Evelyn looked up from the stove, surprised. We have guests, Coulter said. Evelyn understood immediately. She moved into action, pouring hot coffee for the adults, warming milk for the child. She pulled out bread and cheese and the last of the dried meat. Eat, she said. All of you. They did, hungrily. While they ate, Peter told their story. They'd been farming in Kansas. Drought killed their crops. Bank took their land. They'd heard there was work in Oregon. They were trying to get there before winter made the passes impossible. We didn't mean to be a burden, Anne said quietly. We ran out of options. You're not a burden, Evelyn said. She looked at the little girl, Maisie, who was staring at her with huge eyes. How are you feeling, sweetheart? Are you warm enough? Maisie nodded shyly. Evelyn felt the girl's forehead. You feel a little warm. When's the last time you ate a full meal? Maisie looked at her mother. Anne's eyes filled with tears. 3 days ago, Anne whispered. We've been stretching what we have, trying to make it last. Evelyn's jaw tightened. She stood up and started packing food into a sack. Bread, dried meat, potatoes, beans, everything she could find. What are you doing? Peter asked. Giving you supplies. We can't afford... I'm not asking you to pay. She set the sack on the table. You need food. We have food. That's all there is to it. Peter stared at her. Why would you do this for strangers? Because someone did it for me once. She glanced at Coulter. And because it's the right thing to do. Coulter went to the trunk where he kept his money. He pulled out a handful of coins and pressed them into Peter's hand. This should get you to the next town, he said. There's a boarding house there. Tell them Coulter Hayes sent you. They'll give you a fair rate. Peter looked at the money. His hand was shaking. I can't take this. You can. And you will, for your daughter. Peter's face crumpled. Thank you. I don't know how to thank you. They left an hour later, the wagon loaded with supplies. Maisie waved from the back until they disappeared down the road. Evelyn stood beside Coulter, watching them go. We just gave away most of our food, she said. I know. We might not have enough to make it through the winter now. We'll manage. She looked at him. You're a good man, Coulter Hayes. So are you. A good woman, I mean. She smiled, took his hand. They went back inside together. But 3 days later, everything changed. Coulter was in the barn when he heard hoofbeats. Multiple horses. He grabbed his rifle and stepped outside. 4 men rode into the yard. They were well-dressed, too well-dressed for Montana. City men. And in the center of them was someone Coulter didn't recognize, a man in his 50s with cold eyes and an expensive coat. The man dismounted. I'm looking for a woman named Evelyn Pierce. Coulter raised the rifle. Who's asking? My name is Silas Boone. I'm a broker out of St. Louis. Miss Pierce is my property, and I'm here to collect her. The words hit Coulter like a fist. What? Silas pulled a folded paper from his coat. I have a contract here, signed by Howard Marsh. He paid me $300 to secure a bride. Miss Pierce was delivered to him as agreed. The fact that he chose not to marry her doesn't void the contract. She owes me $300, or she comes with me to settle the debt. That's insane, Coulter said. That's business. Silas smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Now where is she? Evelyn stepped out of the cabin. Her face was pale. I'm here, she said. Miss Pierce. Silas tipped his hat mockingly. It's time to go. I'm not going anywhere with you. You don't have a choice. You signed a contract. I never signed anything. Howard Marsh signed on your behalf. That's legally binding. That's a lie, Evelyn said. Her voice was shaking. This is extortion. Call it what you want. You owe me money. If you can't pay, you come with me. I have buyers waiting in St. Louis. Silas looked her up and down. Pretty thing like you will fetch a good price. Coulter stepped between them. She's not going anywhere. Are you prepared to pay her debt? How much? $300 plus interest. Call it $400. It was a fortune. More money than Coulter had seen in his life.
but he didn't hesitate. "Wait here," he said.
Coulter went into the cabin and headed straight for the loose floorboard under his bed. He pried it up with shaking hands. Inside was a metal box, the one that held everything he'd saved over the years. 3 years of brutal work. 3 years of denying himself everything but the bare necessities. 3 years of saving for a future he'd stopped believing in. He opened it. The coins gleamed dully in the dim light. He'd never counted it exactly, but he knew it was close to $500. Maybe more. Everything he had. He scooped it all into a leather pouch and went back outside. Silas was smiling at Evelyn like a snake eyeing a mouse. His men had spread out, blocking the yard. One of them had his hand on his gun. "Coulter, no," Evelyn said when she saw the pouch. "Don't. I won't let you—" "It's done." He walked past her and threw the pouch at Silas's feet. It hit the ground with a heavy thud. Coins spilled out onto the dirt. Silas picked it up, hefted it. His smile widened. "Well, that's more than I expected. You must really want to keep her." "The debt's paid," Coulter said flatly. "Now get off my land." Silas opened the pouch and started counting. The silence stretched out, broken only by the clink of coins. Finally, he pulled the drawstring tight and tucked the pouch into his coat. $463, he said. "Debt paid in full." He pulled out the contract, made a show of tearing it in half. "Miss Pierce, you're free. Congratulations." He turned to mount his horse, but Coulter stepped forward. "One more thing," Coulter said. Silas paused. "Yes? If you or anyone working for you ever comes near her again, I'll kill you. That's not a threat. That's a promise." Silas studied him for a long moment. Then he laughed. "Understood, Mr. Hayes. She's all yours, though I have to say—" He glanced at Evelyn. "She doesn't look worth $400 to me, but then I'm not the one sleeping with her." Coulter's fist connected with Silas's jaw before the man could blink. Silas went down hard, blood spraying from his mouth. His men reached for their guns, but Coulter already had his rifle up. "Try it," Coulter said quietly. The men froze. Silas got to his feet slowly, spitting blood. His eyes were cold with rage. "You'll regret that." "I doubt it." For a moment, Coulter thought Silas might actually go for his gun, but then the man wiped his mouth, climbed onto his horse, and spurred it hard. His men followed. They rode off without looking back. Coulter watched until they disappeared. Then he lowered the rifle and turned to Evelyn. She was crying, silent tears streaming down her face. "You gave him everything," she whispered. "It was just money. It was your whole life. Everything you worked for." "No." He set the rifle down and took her hands. "You're my life. The money was just sitting there doing nothing. At least now it did something good." "Coulter," her voice broke. "I can't. How do I—" "You don't have to do anything. You're free. That's all that matters." She pulled her hands away and pressed them to her face. "You don't understand. That money, I know what you were saving it for. I saw the papers in that box. The deed you were looking at, the land you wanted to buy. You were going to expand the ranch, build something, and now I have something better." "What?" "You." She stared at him through her tears. "How can you say that? You barely know me. I've been here barely 2 months. I've done nothing but bring you trouble. And now I've cost you everything you had." "You didn't cost me anything. I chose this." "Why?" "Because—" He stopped, took a breath. "Because for 3 years I was dead inside. I woke up every day and went through the motions. I worked until I couldn't feel anything. I ate because I had to. I slept because my body demanded it. But I wasn't living. I was just surviving." He stepped closer. "Then you showed up, freezing, desperate, half dead. And somehow you made me want to live again. You made the cabin feel like a home instead of a tomb. You made me laugh, made me angry, made me feel." His voice roughened. "So don't tell me you've cost me everything. You gave me everything back." Evelyn was sobbing now, full body-shaking sobs. She fell against his chest and he caught her, held her while she cried. "I don't deserve you," she said into his shirt. "Maybe not, but you're stuck with me anyway." She laughed through her tears, held him tighter. They stood like that for a long time, in the yard, while the sun climbed higher and the day grew colder. Finally, Evelyn pulled back and wiped her eyes. "What do we do now?" "We go inside. We have dinner.
We figure out the rest later. Just like that? Just like that. She nodded, started to turn, then she stopped. Coulter? Yeah? Thank you. For fighting for me. For choosing me. She looked at him with something fierce and fragile in her eyes. I've never had anyone choose me before. Get used to it, she smiled. It was watery and uncertain, but it was real. They went inside together. That night, the word spread. People had seen Silas Boone and his men ride through Red Hollow on their way out of the valley, seen the blood on Silas's face, and somehow the story got out. Coulter Hayes had paid $400 to free Evelyn Pierce. By morning, half the valley knew. Ben Cartwright showed up first, just after dawn. Coulter was outside feeding the chickens when Ben rode up. Heard what happened, Ben said. Coulter scattered feed. News travels fast. Always does. Wanted to say, that was a hell of a thing you did. Standing up to Silas Boone. Man's got a reputation. Dangerous reputation. I noticed. Also heard you gave him everything you had. Coulter looked up. What's your point, Ben? My point is, you're probably low on cash now, and winter's not over. Ben pulled a small pouch from his saddle. This is from my family. It's not much, but it's something. For what Evelyn did for Rose. We don't need... I know you don't need it, but we want to give it. Let us. Ben held out the pouch. Please. Coulter took it. It was heavy, heavier than he expected. Ben, there's more coming. John Harris heard what happened. He's putting together a collection. People want to help. You two have helped a lot of folks. Time we return the favor. Coulter didn't know what to say. He just stood there, holding the pouch, feeling something tight in his chest. Thank you, he finally managed. Ben nodded. You're a good man, Hayes. And Miss Pierce, she's lucky to have you. Make sure you tell her that. I will. After Ben left, Coulter went inside. Evelyn was making breakfast. She looked up when he came in. Who was that? He set the pouch on the table. Ben Cartwright. He brought this. Said more's coming. People want to help. Evelyn stared at the pouch, then at him. People are giving us money? Apparently. Why? Because you've helped them. Because they know what you did for their families. He sat down. Because maybe people aren't as cruel as you think. She picked up the pouch, opened it. Inside were coins and a few crumpled bills. She touched them gently, like they might disappear. I don't understand people, she said quietly. Neither do I. But I'll take it. Over the next few days, more people came. John Harris brought food and $50 in cash. Emma Harris brought blankets and clothes. Martha Donnelly brought jars of preserves. Even Albert Sykes from the general store sent over a box of supplies with a note that said, on credit, pay when you can. The cabin filled up with gifts. The shelves that had been nearly empty were suddenly stocked again. And slowly, Evelyn started to believe what Coulter had been trying to tell her all along. She wasn't alone. 1 week after Silas left, Evelyn was treating a young mother for mastitis when the woman asked her a question. Miss Pierce, can I ask you something personal? Evelyn looked up from mixing a poultice. Of course. Are you and Mr. Hayes going to get married? Evelyn's hands stilled. We haven't talked about it. Why not? Everyone knows you live together, you love each other. Why not make it official? It's complicated. How? Good question. Evelyn didn't have a good answer. She and Coulter had been living as if they were married for weeks now. They shared a bed, shared meals, shared everything. But neither of them had said the word out loud. Marriage. It felt too big, too permanent, too much like tempting fate. I don't know if he wants that, Evelyn said finally. The young mother laughed. Miss Pierce, that man gave up everything he had for you. If that's not a proposal, I don't know what is. After the woman left, Evelyn sat by the fire and thought about it. About marriage. About what it would mean. She'd come west to marry Howard Marsh. That had been a transaction, a business arrangement. She would cook and clean and bear children. He would provide shelter and security. But this, what she had with Coulter, this was different. This was real. That night, while they were getting ready for bed, Evelyn said, Can I ask you something? Coulter was pulling off his boots. Sure. Do you ever think about getting married again? His hand stopped. He looked at her.
Where's this coming from? Someone asked me today if we were going to get married. I didn't know what to say. Coulter set his boots aside carefully. What do you want to say? I asked you first. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I love Sarah. I'll always love her. But she's gone. And I spent 3 years trying to die with her. He looked at Evelyn. You made me want to live again. So yes, I think about it. About making this permanent. About you being my wife. But only if that's what you want. I won't trap you into something you don't choose. Evelyn's throat tightened. I choose you. You sure? Because marriage, it's not easy. Especially out here. People will still talk. They'll still judge. And I'm not... He stopped. Started again. I'm not easy to live with. I'm quiet. Stubborn. I have bad days where I can't talk to anyone. Days where I wake up and the grief hits me so hard I can't breathe. I know. I have those days too. And you still want this? I want this. She moved closer, took his hands. I want you. I want us. I want to build a life here. A real life. Not just surviving, but living. Coulter pulled her close, pressed his forehead against hers. Then marry me. Not because it's practical or expected. Marry me because you want to. I do want to. Then we'll do it. When? Whenever you want, she smiled. Tomorrow? He laughed. Tomorrow's too soon. We need, I don't know, a ring, a dress, people. I don't need any of that. I just need you. You deserve better than a rushed ceremony. I don't want better. I want you. He kissed her, long and deep and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, he said, Next week. We'll do it next week. Give me time to make it right. Okay, next week. But they didn't make it to next week. 3 days later, while Coulter was in town buying supplies, a small girl showed up at the cabin. She was maybe 7 or 8, wearing a threadbare coat and boots too big for her feet. She knocked timidly on the door. Evelyn opened it. Hello, can I help you? The girl stared at her with huge eyes. Are you the nurse lady? I am. What's wrong? Are you hurt? No, but Mama is. She's been bleeding for 2 days. Papa doesn't know what to do. He sent me to get help. Evelyn grabbed her medical bag immediately. Where's your mother? Our camp. About a mile east. By the creek. Show me. The girl led her through the woods to a makeshift camp, just a tent and a dying fire. Inside the tent, a woman lay on a bedroll, pale and shaking. A man knelt beside her, looking terrified. Evelyn recognized them immediately. Peter and Anne Grant, the family they'd helped weeks ago. And the little girl was Maisie. Miss Pierce, Peter said, relief flooding his face. Thank heaven. We didn't know where else to go. Evelyn knelt beside Anne. The woman was burning with fever. Blood soaked the bedroll beneath her. How long has she been bleeding? Evelyn asked. 2 days. It started as just her monthly courses. But then it got worse. So much worse. I don't know what's wrong. Evelyn examined Anne quickly. Her stomach dropped. This wasn't normal bleeding. This was hemorrhaging, and Anne was in shock. I need to get her to the cabin, Evelyn said. Now, Peter, can you carry her? Of course. Maisie, you lead the way, fast as you can. They moved as quickly as they could through the woods. Anne moaned with every step. Blood left a trail behind them. When they got to the cabin, Evelyn cleared the table and had Peter lay Anne on it. She worked frantically, using every skill she'd learned during the war, packing the wound, giving Anne willow bark for the pain, trying to stop the bleeding, but it wouldn't stop. Peter, I need you to ride to town, Evelyn said. Get the doctor. Tell him it's an emergency. I can't leave her. You have to. I can't do this alone. She needs a real doctor. Go, now. Peter hesitated. Then he kissed his wife's forehead and ran. Evelyn kept working, kept trying, but she could feel Anne slipping away. Maisie, Evelyn said gently, come hold your mother's hand. Talk to her. Let her hear your voice. Maisie climbed onto a chair and took her mother's hand. Mama, I'm here. You're going to be okay. Miss Pierce is helping you. Anne's eyes fluttered open. She looked at her daughter and smiled weakly. My sweet girl. Don't talk, Mama. Save your strength. I love you, Maisie. You know that, don't you? Of course I know.
I love you too. Evelyn's vision blurred. She knew what was happening. She'd seen it too many times during the war. Anne was saying goodbye. Maisie, can you get me some more water? Evelyn asked softly. From the bucket outside? Maisie looked confused, but she obeyed. As soon as she left, Anne grabbed Evelyn's wrist. Promise me, Anne whispered. Promise you'll take care of her. If I can't, don't talk like that. You're going to be fine. Promise me. Evelyn's throat closed. I promise. Anne relaxed. Thank you. Maisie came back with the water. Evelyn kept working, kept fighting, but she knew it was hopeless.
Anne Grant died an hour later, just as Peter returned with the doctor. Peter fell to his knees beside the table and wept. The doctor checked Anne's pulse, confirmed what they already knew, and shook his head sadly. Maisie stood in the corner, silent, not crying, just staring. Evelyn went to her and knelt down. Maisie, sweetheart, is Mama dead? The bluntness of the question broke Evelyn's heart. Yes, I'm so sorry. I tried everything. I know. Maisie's voice was flat. You did your best. It's not your fault. But it felt like her fault. It felt like every death she'd ever failed to prevent. Coulter arrived home just as the doctor was leaving. He took one look at the scene, Peter sobbing, Evelyn covered in blood, a sheet-covered body on the table, and understood. He went to Evelyn and pulled her into his arms. She stood stiff and unresponsive. It's not your fault, he murmured. I know. Evelyn, I need to clean up. There's blood everywhere. She pulled away from him and started scrubbing the table mechanically. Coulter looked at Peter. I'm sorry for your loss. Peter didn't respond, just kept crying. Then Maisie spoke up. What happens to me now? Everyone turned to look at her. What do you mean, honey? Coulter asked. Papa can't take care of me alone. He has to work. He has to find a job. I'll just slow him down. Her voice was eerily calm. Do I go to an orphanage, or do I find work somewhere? You're 8 years old, Evelyn said sharply. You're not going to work. Then what? The question hung in the air. Peter looked up, his face ravaged. I don't know how to... He broke down again. Evelyn looked at Coulter. Coulter looked at Maisie. And in that moment, they both knew. She'll stay with us? Evelyn said. Peter's head snapped up. What? Your wife asked me to take care of her, so I will. She'll stay here. We'll raise her. I can't ask you to... You're not asking. I'm offering. Evelyn's voice was firm. You need time to grieve, to figure out your life. When you're ready, if you want her back, we'll talk. But until then, she stays with us. Peter looked at his daughter, then at Evelyn. You'd do that? Yes. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. Peter broke down crying again, but this time it sounded like relief. Later that night, after Peter had left to bury his wife, after Maisie had cried herself to sleep in Evelyn's arms, Coulter and Evelyn sat by the fire. Are you sure about this? Coulter asked quietly. Taking in a child? No, I'm terrified, but I made a promise. We don't have much, barely enough for the two of us. We'll figure it out. We always do. He took her hand. We're going to be parents. I know. That's not what I expected when I woke up this morning. Me neither. She laughed shakily. We're getting married next week and we already have a daughter. We're doing this backwards. Seems to be our way. She leaned against him. Are you angry that I made this decision without asking you? No, I would have done the same thing. Really? Really? He kissed her forehead. We'll make it work, somehow. And in the small bed on the other side of the room, Maisie pretended to sleep and listened to them talk. To these two strangers who'd just promised to take care of her. She didn't understand it, didn't understand why they'd choose this. Choose her. But for the first time since her mother had started bleeding, Maisie felt something other than terror. She felt safe. The first week with Maisie was harder than either of them expected. The girl barely spoke. She ate when told to eat, slept when told to sleep, but otherwise moved through the cabin like a ghost. She didn't cry, didn't complain, just existed. It terrified Evelyn more than any tantrum would have. She's too quiet, Evelyn said one night after Maisie had gone to bed. Children shouldn't be that quiet. Coulter was mending a harness by the fire. She's grieving. Give her time. I know. But it's like she's not even here, like she's just waiting for something bad to happen. Can you blame her? Her mother just died. Her father left her with strangers. She probably thinks we're going to leave too. Evelyn wrapped her arms around herself. What if we can't do this? What if we're terrible at it? We probably will be, at first. He set the harness down. But we'll figure it out, same as everything else. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, it's just necessary. The next morning, Evelyn woke early to find Maisie already up, sitting by the window and staring out at the snow. The girl was wearing the same dress she'd arrived in, the only one she had. Evelyn sat down beside her. Good morning. Maisie didn't look at her. Morning. Did you sleep all right? Yes, ma'am. You don't have to call me ma'am. Evelyn is fine. Maisie finally looked at her. Papa said I should be respectful since you're taking care of me. You can be respectful and still call me Evelyn. She paused. Or if you'd rather, you could call me something else. Whatever feels right to you. Like what? Evelyn's throat tightened. I don't know. What do you want to call me? Maisie thought about it. Can I just call you Evelyn for now, until I figure it out? Of course. They sat in silence for a while. Then Maisie said, Do you think my papa's coming back? I think he needs time to heal. Losing your mother, it broke something in him. But yes, I think he'll come back eventually. What if he doesn't? Evelyn chose her words carefully. Then you'll stay here, with us, for as long as you need. Forever? If that's what it takes. Maisie looked back out the window. I don't understand why you'd want me. You don't even know me. We're getting to know you. But why? You could have said no. Sent me to an orphanage. That's what most people would do. Evelyn thought about how to answer that. About all the time she'd been unwanted. All the time she'd been turned away. Because, she said finally, everyone deserves someone who'll fight for them. Someone who'll choose them when everyone else walks away. Your mother asked me to be that person for you, and I'm going to try my best. Maisie's eyes filled with tears. I miss her. I know, sweetheart. It hurts. I know. Does it ever stop hurting? Evelyn pulled the girl into her arms. No, but it gets easier to carry, I promise. Maisie cried then. Finally cried. Deep, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. Evelyn held her and let her cry. And when Coulter came in from the barn and saw them, he just quietly started making breakfast. After that, Maisie started to open up. Slowly, carefully, like a flower afraid of frost. She helped Evelyn with chores, learned to make bread, asked questions about nursing, started talking about her mother, small memories that she'd pull out and examine like precious stones. And she watched Coulter and Evelyn constantly, the way they moved around each other, the way they talked, the small touches and quiet looks. One afternoon, while Evelyn was teaching her to sew, Maisie asked, Are you and Mr. Hayes married? Evelyn's needle stilled. Not yet, but we will be, soon. Will you have a wedding? A small one, just us and a few friends. Can I come? Of course you can come. You're part of this family now. Maisie was quiet for a moment. Then, if you get married, does that make you my mother? The question hit Evelyn like a fist. I don't know. Do you want it to? I already have a mother. She's dead, but she's still my mother. You're right, she is, and she always will be. So what are you? Evelyn set down her sewing. I don't know what to call it, but I care about you, and I'm going to take care of you. And if you need me to be something like a mother, I'll try to be. But I'll never try to replace her. Is that okay? Maisie thought about it, then she nodded. Okay. They went back to sewing, but something had shifted, something small but important. A week later, Coulter came back from town with news. Reverend Mills can marry us this Sunday, he said, if we're still sure. Evelyn looked up from where she was braiding Maisie's hair. This Sunday? That's 3 days away. Too soon? No, it's perfect. Maisie squirmed. Can I wear something nice? I don't have anything nice. Evelyn smiled. We'll figure something out. That night, Evelyn pulled out the one good dress she owned, the one she'd worn when she arrived in Montana to marry Howard Marsh. It was wrinkled and stained, but the fabric was still good. She started taking it apart, remaking it.
What are you doing? Coulter asked. Making Maisie a dress. For the wedding. What about you? I'll wear what I'm wearing. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. She looked at him. Coulter, we don't have money for a fancy dress, and I don't need one. I just need you. I know, but you deserve... He stopped, pulled something from his pocket. Here. It was a ring, simple. A thin gold band with a small stone. Nothing fancy, but it was real.
Evelyn's breath caught.
Where did you get this? It was my mother's. Only thing I have left of her. I was saving it for... He paused. I was going to give it to Sarah, but I never got the chance. She died before we could afford a wedding. Evelyn tried to hand it back. Then you should save it for... For who? There's no one else. There's only you. He took her hand. I want you to have it. If you'll take it. She looked at the ring, at him, at Maisie watching them both with wide eyes. Yes, Evelyn whispered. I'll take it. He slipped it onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Maisie clapped her hands. You're really getting married. We really are, Coulter said. And for the first time since Anne Grant died, Evelyn felt something other than grief. She felt hope. Sunday came too fast and not fast enough. Evelyn woke before dawn, nerves eating at her stomach. She'd been married before, or almost married. But this felt different. This felt real. Maisie was already awake, sitting by the fire in her new dress. Evelyn had stayed up half the night finishing it. It was simple, just blue cotton with white trim. But Maisie looked at it like it was made of silk. You look beautiful, Evelyn said. So do you. Evelyn looked down at herself. She'd washed and mended her old dress as best she could. It wasn't much, but Coulter had said it didn't matter, and she chose to believe him. They rode to town together in the wagon. The morning was cold but clear. The sky was so blue it hurt to look at. When they arrived at the church, Evelyn was surprised to see people already there. Ben and Mary Cartwright, John and Emma Harris, Martha Donnelly, even Albert Sykes from the general store. What are they doing here? Evelyn whispered. I may have mentioned to a few people that we were getting married, Coulter said. Word spread. You invited half the valley? I didn't invite anyone. They just came. Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes. These people who judged her, whispered about her, called her names. They'd come to see her marry. Mary Cartwright approached with a bouquet of dried flowers. For you. I know they're not fresh, but it's winter, so... They're perfect, Evelyn said, taking them. Thank you. You've done so much for us. For everyone. This is the least we can do. Reverend Mills met them at the door. Ready? Coulter looked at Evelyn. You ready? She took a deep breath. Yes. They walked into the church together. Maisie followed, clutching a handful of flower petals Mary had given her. The church was simple, plain, but it felt sacred anyway. Reverend Mills stood at the front. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to join Coulter Hayes and Evelyn Pierce in marriage. Evelyn barely heard the words. She was too focused on Coulter, on the way he looked at her like she was something precious, something worth keeping. When it came time for vows, Reverend Mills said, Do you, Coulter Hayes, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold in sickness and in health for as long as you both shall live? I do. And do you, Evelyn Pierce, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold in sickness and in health for as long as you both shall live? Evelyn's voice shook. I do. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Coulter kissed her, gentle, sure, like a promise. The church erupted in applause. Maisie threw her flower petals in the air, and Evelyn laughed through her tears. They were married. After the ceremony, people crowded around to congratulate them. Ben slapped Coulter on the back. Mary hugged Evelyn. Even Judith Crane, who'd been so cruel before, approached hesitantly. Congratulations, Mrs. Hayes, Judith said stiffly. Thank you, Evelyn said. She could have been cold, could have thrown the woman's cruelty back in her face, but she didn't. I appreciate you coming. Judith looked surprised. Then she nodded and walked away. Emma Harris pulled Evelyn aside. I'm glad you're staying. The valley needs you. We all do. I'm not going anywhere, Evelyn said. Good. They rode home as the sun was setting. Maisie fell asleep in the back of the wagon, exhausted from the excitement. Coulter drove with one arm around Evelyn. How does it feel? He asked. Being Mrs. Hayes? Strange. Good. Right. She leaned against him. I never thought I'd have this. A real marriage. A family. Me neither. Not after Sarah. Do you think she'd be angry that you moved on? Coulter was quiet for a long moment. No. Sarah wanted me to be happy. She told me that near the end, said if anything happened to her, I shouldn't waste my life grieving. He paused. I didn't listen, not for a long time, but I think she'd be glad I finally did. I wish I could have met her. She would have liked you. You're both stubborn as hell. Evelyn laughed. Is that a compliment? It is in Montana.
When they got home, Coulter carried Maisie inside and put her to bed. She woke up just enough to mumble, "Love you," before falling back asleep. Evelyn froze. Coulter met her eyes across the room. Neither of them said anything, but they both knew. Maisie had just called this place home, had just called them family. Later, after they changed for bed, Coulter said, "Peter hasn't come back." "I know. It's been 3 weeks. I don't think he's coming." "I know that too."
So Maisie's ours? For real?
Evelyn looked toward where the girl was sleeping. "I think she's been ours since the moment her mother asked me to take care of her. We just didn't know it yet." Coulter pulled her close. "We're parents." "We're parents," Evelyn agreed. "Scared, unqualified, making it up as we go parents." "Best kind." She laughed. Then she kissed him. And for the first time in her life, Evelyn felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Spring came slowly to Montana. The snow melted grudgingly, revealing brown earth and dead grass. But underneath, new growth was starting, green shoots pushing through the frozen ground. The ranch changed too. Coulter built an addition onto the cabin, a small room for Maisie. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Evelyn sewed curtains for the window and helped Maisie paint the walls a cheerful yellow. "It's perfect," Maisie said when it was done. "You sure? It's pretty small." "It's mine." "That makes it perfect." People kept coming for medical help. Evelyn's reputation as a nurse had spread beyond the valley. She delivered babies, set broken bones, treated everything from fever to frostbite. And every time someone tried to pay her more than she asked, she'd smile and say, "Just doing my job." One afternoon in late April, a rider came to the ranch. Evelyn was outside planting a garden when she heard hoofbeats. She looked up to see a man she didn't recognize, weathered, tired-looking, riding a horse that had seen better days. Then she looked closer, and her stomach dropped. It was Peter Grant. She stood slowly. "Peter." He dismounted. He looked different, thinner, older, but more settled somehow, like he'd found something he'd been missing. Mrs. Hayes." He took off his hat. "I heard you got married. Congratulations." "Thank you." She wiped her hands on her apron. "We weren't expecting you." "I know. I'm sorry it took so long. He stopped, took a breath. "I needed time. To grieve. To figure out how to keep living without Anne. It was hard." "I understand. I got work. In a town about 50 miles west. Carpentry. It pays well. I've been saving money, building a life." He looked toward the cabin. "I came to see Maisie, if that's all right." Evelyn's heart clenched. "Of course, she's inside." Peter started to walk toward the cabin, then stopped. "Mrs. Hayes, is she doing okay? After everything?" "She's doing well. She misses you and her mother, but she's healing." "Good, that's good." Evelyn called for Maisie. The girl came running out, saw her father, and froze. "Papa? Hey, Maisie girl." She ran to him. He caught her and held her tight, and they both started crying. Evelyn turned away to give them privacy. Her chest felt tight. She'd known this moment might come, had known Peter might want Maisie back. But knowing and experiencing were different things. Coulter came out of the barn and stood beside her. "That Peter?" "Yeah." "You okay?" "I don't know." They watched as Peter set Maisie down and knelt to talk to her. The conversation was too quiet to hear, but Evelyn could see Maisie's face. The confusion, the hope, the fear. Finally, Peter stood and walked over to them. "Can we talk?" he asked. They went inside. Maisie stayed outside picking wildflowers. Peter sat at the table and stared at his hands. "I came here thinking I'd take her back, that I'd worked through my grief enough to be a father again, but seeing how she is with you," he looked up. "She's happy, really happy. I haven't seen her like that since before Anne died." "She's a good kid," Coulter said.
She is, and she deserves better than what I can give her right now. A one-room shack above a carpentry shop. No mother. A father who still wakes up crying in the middle of the night. He swallowed hard. "I came to ask, would you consider keeping her, not temporarily, permanently, as your daughter?" Evelyn's breath caught. "Peter, I know it's a lot to ask, but she needs stability. She needs a real home. She needs a mother." His voice cracked. "Anne asked you to take care of her. I'm asking you to keep her." Coulter looked at Evelyn. Evelyn looked at Coulter. They didn't need to speak. They already knew the answer. "Yes," Evelyn said. "We'll keep her. We'll love her and raise her and give her everything we can." Peter's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you. I'll send money when I can. And I'll visit. I won't disappear. She needs to know I still love her." "Of course. Can I tell her before I go?" "She's your daughter. You can do whatever you need to do." Peter went outside. Evelyn and Coulter watched through the window as he knelt down and talked to Maisie again. Watched as Maisie cried and hugged him. Watched as he kissed her forehead and stood up. He said something else. Maisie looked toward the cabin. Then she nodded. Peter walked back to his horse. Maisie ran inside and threw herself into Evelyn's arms. "He said I get to stay," she sobbed. "He said you're my family now. Is that true?" Evelyn held her tight. "It's true. If you want it to be." "I want it. I want to stay forever." "Then you will." Maisie pulled back and looked at her, then at Coulter. Can I call you Mama and Papa? Or is that wrong?" Evelyn's vision blurred. "It's not wrong. It's perfect." Maisie hugged her again. Then she ran to Coulter and hugged him too. He picked her up and held her like she weighed nothing. Through the window, they watched Peter ride away. He looked back once, raised his hand in farewell, and then he was gone. The valley changed with the seasons. Summer brought heat and long days. Coulter worked the ranch while Evelyn continued her nursing. Maisie helped with everything, feeding chickens, tending the garden, learning to cook and sew, and all the things a girl needed to know. But she also learned other things. Coulter taught her to ride, to shoot, to fix a fence, and Evelyn taught her about medicine, about healing, about the importance of helping others. One evening in late summer, they sat on the porch watching the sunset. Maisie was between them, her head on Evelyn's shoulder. "Mama?" Maisie said. "Yes, sweetheart? Do you think my first mama would be angry that I have a new family?" Evelyn thought about how to answer. "No, I think she'd be happy, because all she wanted was for you to be safe and loved, and you are." "I still miss her." "You always will, and that's okay. You can love her and love us at the same time. There's room in your heart for all of it." Maisie was quiet for a moment. Then, "I'm glad I knocked on your door that day, when I was looking for help." "So am I." "Me too," Coulter said. "Best thing that ever happened to us." They sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned pink, then purple, then dark. Inside, a lamp burned in the window. The cabin looked warm and welcoming, like a real home. The next year brought more changes. Peter visited twice, staying for a few days each time. He and Maisie were working out a relationship that was different from before, but still loving. He'd started courting a widow in his town, a kind woman named Helen, who Maisie liked immediately. "I'm glad Papa found someone," Maisie told Evelyn one night. "He was so lonely." "So am I." "Do you think he'll get married?" "Maybe. Would that bother you?" "No. I want him to be happy." She paused. "Is it weird that I have two families now?" "No. It just means you're very loved." The ranch prospered. With the money the community had given them and the income from Evelyn's nursing, they were able to expand. Coulter bought more land, built a proper barn, got more livestock. But more than that, the cabin became a gathering place. People stopped by constantly, for medical help, for advice, just to visit.
The lonely, isolated ranch that Coulter had retreated to after Sarah's death had transformed into something else entirely. Something alive. One winter evening, 2 years after they'd married, Evelyn sat by the fire sewing while Coulter read to Maisie from a book about horses. The scene was so domestic, so normal, that Evelyn had to stop and just look at it. This was her life now. This warmth, this love, this family. She thought about the woman she'd been when she first arrived in Montana. Desperate, broken, half frozen, and completely alone. She'd thought her life was over, thought she'd never be anything but a burden and a mistake. But she'd been wrong. Because sometimes the worst moments lead to the best things. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what really matters. Sometimes the people who save you are the ones you least expect.
What are you thinking about? Coulter asked, looking up from the book. Just how lucky I am. We're the lucky ones. You saved us. No, you saved me first. Maybe we saved each other, Evelyn smiled. Maybe we did. Maisie yawned and curled up against Coulter's side. Tell the story again, about the blizzard. You've heard it 100 times, Coulter said. I like it. It's romantic. Evelyn laughed. Romantic? I was half dead and hiding behind a woodpile.
And Papa saved you. That's romantic. I suppose it is. Coulter started telling the story, embellishing parts, making Maisie giggle. Evelyn listened and felt that familiar warmth in her chest, the one that said, "You're home." Because she was. Finally, truly home. Not just in a place, but with people. People who chose her, who fought for her, who loved her despite all her broken pieces, and she'd done the same for them. The fire crackled. Outside, snow began to fall, the first snow of the season. But inside the cabin, everything was warm. 3 people who'd all been lost had found each other, had built something real from nothing but hope and stubbornness and love. A family. Not perfect, not easy, but theirs. And sometimes that was more than enough. Sometimes it was everything. Years later, when people in the valley told stories about the harsh winter of 1887, they'd talk about the blizzards and the cold and the people who didn't make it through, but they'd also talk about the woman who showed up half frozen and became the valley's best nurse, about the widower who gave up everything to save her, about the little girl who lost her mother and found new parents. They'd talk about how love could grow in the coldest places, how the strongest families were often the ones that weren't born, but chosen. How sometimes the bravest thing a person could do was let someone else in. And every time the story was told, it ended the same way. With a cabin on a hill, a fire in the hearth, and 3 people who'd learned that home wasn't a place you found. It was something you built together, one cold day at a time.
Chandler made it out. Groovy! Numa, how you doing? Welcome, Numa. How have you been?
God, I don't want to die again.
Check the cord. Alright.
I think he's got me trapped, man.
Download Thunderstore. Then when it download on Overwolf. Sure.
A gunkfish? The fuck is that thing? Whoa!
What the fuck is happening? What the fuck was that?
I'm slippery. Bro, something just gunked all over me.
Dude, what the hell just happened? What's up, Slayer? Been
Good,
chilling.
so
How are
good.
you? Good?
Yeah.
Playing Lethal. I think I'm gonna do modded and see how many people we can
Let's
get in the
just-
game.
Depot something and try to see if we can go to the fire exit.
Wait, actually, does it require downloading other people downloading mods? I think I'm gonna.
I don't
I don't know what to do because I don't want Megan to have to download mods too. I'm gonna leave it be for now. Maybe in the future we'll do modded Lethal and we'll get more people in.
the ship.